As we know, life can be challenging for many autistic children at any given age and time, plus their stages in their life after being diagnosed with autism especially. The most important thing as a parent for you to do is access your child, have it diagnosed early in their child's life, and find helpful and respectful treatment and resources for the child. As they say, the earlier the better you do this, the easier it is to find the right treatments and methods, etc. for your child. The following video podcast is an informational guideline for accessing your child. As you are a parent, you can begin accessing your child at home as early as 1 year old. But as your child ages and matures, characteristics of an autism spectrum disorder may become more apparent earlier or later in life. Welcome back, chameleons. This is how to access autism in your child. This one is all in the self-diagnosing versus your diagnosing autism series podcast that I am doing up for you guys as of late, which I humbly apologize, but I'm back on the bandwagon before something else happens. If you haven't been following me via through my Twitter, I have mentioned that I'm trying to tidy up this series, especially as well as another one for you guys before I head away next week for a break away from all my projects, which I'll be back within another week or so to return back to what I have to do. So as you're aware, this is an informational guide. This will be obviously 2 methods to follow and abide by. Take it from a grain of salt based on an autistic from me to you guys, and these methods are as follows. Method 1 is observing and assessing your child, and method 2 will be looking for the signs of autism spectrum disorders. So let's begin this. Method 1 is observing and assessing your child. 1 is get organized to observe. Ensure that you have enough time of the day for at least 2 to 3 weeks to observe, interact with your child, and then leave the room to record your own observations of what you've seen, heard, and what have you with your child. Make sure you have dedicated and uninterrupted times and have a notebook with you to record what you see and hear, etc. 2, record what you observe. This will follow on to the very first step of number 1, getting organized to observe, which includes obviously when you're recording down what you're observing, include the dates, times, the duration of the observation, as well as any interactive part of your assessment with your child. Be objective as possible. Avoid commenting on your feelings or inputting your own information. You can do the inputting later once you have a factual record that has already been set for you. When observing without interaction, stay seated or standing in the same place with as little movement or sound as possible. Anything you do to provide sensory input such as sounds, movement, etc. could change the child's natural behaviors. Watch how your child interacts with you during the conversations, playtime, routines, cuddling, etc. Be thoughtful and put to memory what transpires. Once you're done, record what happened as faithfully as possible. Let the notebook sit for a while and then you can review your record at a later date. Read the observations and other notations on the interactions and compare them to the list in this article on autism characteristics, or basically just follow through some other articles through WikiHow or through certain other autism organisation groups such as ASAN or the Autism Binary Network for Females. 3, consider the outcome. If very few characteristics has appeared or they may appear but don't significantly interfere with your child's ability to interact with you, save the notebook and reassess it in the next 6 months. If the child exhibits significant characteristics, your child may be autistic. The characteristics are determined by one or not just one single event, but rather by seeing patterns in the behavior that will emerge. If your child demonstrates more than 3 autism characteristics that has clearly mentioned in my autism diagnostic manual, which you can hopefully find in one of my listings in the podcast as well as in the video in itself, which hopefully I'll link up to this for you, or else feel free to find it on my podcast list. If you are convinced that your child is disabled, however, basically, as we know, or shall we say, with this characteristics I shall continue on, remember that the assessment will be an ongoing activity for you both. If you aren't convinced whether your child needs to be evaluated, continue with your logs and ensure that there are clear planned observational periods between you and your child. If you're convinced that your child is disabled, however, don't hesitate to follow through with getting your child formally evaluated with a clinical team that is specialised in this area. 4 strong characteristics or 5 or more noteworthy characteristics of an autism spectrum disorder would suggest that it's getting your child evaluated, however. Number 4, follow up. If you suspect autism, contact your local school district if you are doing it through the school, as well as a professional in the area of developmental pediatrics or clinical specialist in ASD. Have a formal set of tests administered to determine if your findings are valid and what type of disorder your child may have, as well as where to secure some treatments, therapies, and what have. Method 2, looking for signs of ASD. Last and not least, number 1, know the signs. Read both this or any other lists or even just any articles that I clearly mentioned and so on and so forth. Do a thorough research based on this through the internet, but be careful. Also, maybe see if you can can find some videos based on the topics through certain autistic advocates, educators such as myself, Indy, Andy, the Aspie world, and so on and so forth, that can actually give you guys a clearer, better understanding about this. As I said before, also do your own research and reading thoroughly, as we know that as the child grows that they're going to show different signs and symptoms as well as characteristics that are not all the same for all children. So again, as a clear heed or warning or advice here while you're listening is be sure that not all autistics are same. They're on a different spectrum level. So if you suspect that after talking to me or meeting me in person and you think that your child is autistic, again, I clearly suggest just to go seek professional help and advice with somebody who is actually professional in that field, because obviously, as I said, I am just sharing this based on my lived experiences as well as just navigating through life with autism myself. Throughout your observation assessments, keep an eye out for the following characteristic consistent with your ASDs, however. So like characteristics could be, one, you need to see how they're talking to you, how they're engaging with you, how they're making eye contact, how they're talking and engaging with you at a younger age. Would suspect that, putting sentences together, are they actually socializing with you properly, or are they staying away from you, or what have. Two, look at social interactions and preferences. Again, this will just go from as per above. Autistic kids tend to have different body languages and don't always understand non-autistic body language and expectations. So some of the signs may include following disengagement due to a disinterest in others or because interaction is too stressful or complicated. They may prefer to be playing alone or with only a few trusted people in their circle, hiding behind furniture, rolling up in a blanket, or backing into a corner, engaging basically in avoidance behavior. They may avoid eye contact, not imitating the adult or having a lack of expression, facial or otherwise, avoiding touch or disliking certain types of touch, example wise like hugs but disturbed by a hand on the shoulder or being touched from behind, confused about reciprocity, such as rolling a ball to one person and then having them to roll it back, not recognizing appropriate behavior, example not saying hi when someone hi, say hi to them, hard time following directions, becomes easily confused or overwhelmed, little to no recognition of facial expressions, voice inflections, or any general social behavior. Don't confuse compliance with understanding, however, in this case. 3. Look at how your child uses the everyday language. Signs in this area may include having either delayed speech development, unusual speech development, or not using speech at all. This may include a child who has begun to speak and then later loses that ability, or a child who can usually speak but stops talking when they are stressed. Some autistic children quickly develop nuanced vocabulary and understanding of grammar, observing that the child understands words by following simple instructions but not using words of his or own, repeating words or sounds such which is known as Echolalia, or create your own non-existent language or words which is known as neologisms. Child learns to read before learning to speak or seems to understand written words better than the spoken ones. 4. Look at sensory factors. Many autistic people have senses that are over and or undersensitive, which are clearly mentioned about this, about the under versus oversensitive in autistic children, which hopefully I will link it either in this podcast or share it with you later to date. But they may react with signs of pain or discomfort to sensory stimuli that don't bother other people, or they may not notice or not be bothered by sensory stimuli that are obvious or overpowering to other people. Some of the signs in this area may include having a sensitivity to texture, most often observed by avoidance of certain types of clothing. Obviously some autistics are really sensitive on certain tags on the back that may cause them to itch, or even some form of materials that's inside certain clothing pieces. They might tug or remove any of the clothing that may feel uncomfortable for them, having strong reactions to certain smells, textures, tones, voices, volume, or anything that's disruptive to their 5 classic senses. Did you know sensitivity to touch can sometimes manifest as low pain tolerance and a tendency to get rashes if they wear clothing with certain textures? 5. Look at focused or repetitive behaviors. Signs may include here are engaging in self-simulatory behavior such as stimming, it's known for, which will be known as rocking, finger playing in front of the eyes, flapping arms, pacing, or any other unusual actions that you may deem inappropriate in your eye. Getting upset if you mess with their repetition, such as if you move one of the toys they're lining up, or if you get in the way of their walking in circles. So my tips here is try to avoid justifying your child's behavior. He or she is just shy, or my sister didn't speak until she was X months old. Remember, you are being objective, and autism is known as a neurodevelopmental disability, not a condemnation. If reading this list makes you wonder if you are autistic, consider reading it for your own good too. Everyone has some autistic traits, but in neurotypicals they aren't disabling. If you feel that you may be disabled and do some reflection, do seek professional opinion for yourself. So these disorders are pervasive and severe. Over time, they create a larger gap between non-ASD behaviors and ASD behaviors. It's when you notice that something stands between your children and living effectively, there is likely a disability present. Early intervention treatment is strongly urged so the child can learn good coping mechanisms right away. Last but not least, warnings from me as an Aspie. When purposefully entering with your child, however, if you you are adding interaction that may upset your child, closely watch their body language and stop right away. If it seems to be bothering them, you push them too far, they may feel panic or even may lash out for the worst case scenario. When observing only though, however, watch to ensure that what they interact or how you interact with your child isn't in any way dangerous to you and the child to bring any harm. Some children with ASDs are fascinated with electrical equipment, outlets, shiny objects that may be sharp, etc. Be careful when finding a therapist for an autistic child. Compliance-based therapies such as many types of ABA can be doing more harm than good. So this quickly ends how to assess autism in your child. Stay tuned for more of the series of the self-diagnosing versus diagnosing series, and I'll be back with you shortly. Also, where to find me, this again will be listed in the socials, but just to tell you right now is Facebook is my Aspie.answers. Twitter game will be Aspie Answers, which are both capital A. Spotify obviously is Aspie Answers, which is capital A, capital A. Patreon is my crowdfunding page right now. You can find me on patreon.com, Aspie Answers, basically. And for those of you who don't know what Patreon is, today, for those who are listening that are new, I have this set up for funding for future projects like this one of my podcast versus my merch that I've been designing, which I'll share more briefly soon about my merch update, or even in this podcast right now as I'm addressing this to you guys, is that it's like a crowdfunding page or funding page for creators like me, or content creators, music creators, whoever it may be that's seeking out funding to support themselves in a way of, maybe say they need extra equipment for their cameras versus maybe their radio equipment if they were doing something similar like I am doing today, or covering their rent, travel costs, what have you. And in saying this, also basically for the merch, you'll see me basically maybe wearing it once in a while on my YouTube channel, as well as maybe, you know, out and about in public. And so in saying this, my merch site is spreadshirt.com, life-of-and-Aspie. And another one you can find me on my social is for those who haven't and I like to read instead of watching or what have you, as an alternative for you guys, is lifeofanaspieweb.wordpress.com. So this wraps up everything. I want to thank you all for listening right now. Follow me on the socials that were listed below. Subscribe, share this podcast to friends and family. You know, if you want to, feel free to become a patron to support this future project, as well as many others that is in the works as of this time. Feel free to, you know, donate big or small with me and this journey of it. And also my merch obviously will cover the cost for this as well. So I'll catch you all again on the other side. Aspie signing out for now, and bye.